Inside of today's video, we're going to be ranking all 27 mythic brawlers in the game, from the very worst all the way up to the very best. We're also going to be putting them in a tier list, so this is going to help you decide which mythic brawlers you want to unlock, and of course, they're pretty costly, so you don't want to be making the wrong decision. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. So, starting off with the worst mythic brawler, and probably the worst brawler in the game, we have Doug. Do I even need to explain? I think in terms of the casual play base, he's actually an okay brawler, especially on grassy maps like center stage, but for the most part, good players can counter him easily. So, next up in the F tier, and at number 26, we have Janet. So again, there's a few maps that you can play Janet on, but I would say for the most part, she's one of the most boring brawlers to play because she's one of the least played brawlers in the game, and she's also really bad as well. So both of these combined, it isn't worthwhile investing in Janet. And lastly, in the F tier, we have Squeak. So Squeak, even since the hypercharge, it hasn't helped him out whatsoever. The only good thing about it is his residue gadget. He is only good as a late pick inside of ranked, but if you don't play ranked, he's just so hard to push right now. Every assassin just feasts on him. So now moving on to the D tier, starting off with the 24th best mythic, we have Miko. So he definitely is dropping off every single meta. There's just always a new assassin with a better hypercharge or just a new brawler with better mechanics, and Miko's just dropping off, and especially because again, loads of brawlers are just getting damage buffs and whatever else, Miko's not receiving anything, so he's just falling down the rankings. So next at number 23, we have Fang. So another brawler that's just seeming to fall off, especially considering there's just better assassins out there. His hypercharge takes a long time to get. I will say Fang is easy to play against most people, you know, up to probably around 900 trophies. You could probably have a decent success rate as long as the map is open so you can chain your super. But again, there's just better assassins just like Mortis and Mo who are just way better. So next up at number 22, we have Ruffs, and you've guessed it, another brawler that has fallen off. I would have actually recommended to max out Ruffs like 6 months ago or so, but again, other brawlers just getting damage buffs. There's just too many of his counters becoming some of the best brawlers in the game. You think of throwers, they dominate Ruffs. You think of any assassin or aggro brawler, they can dominate Ruffs because he doesn't have the DPS to keep up. He's not even that great in the competitive meta. Next up at number 21, we have Mr. P. So Mr. P, again, another brawler that has really low DPS, and you've guessed it, he can't keep up with the meta whatsoever either. There's just too many hypercharged brawlers in the game right now where he doesn't really have one. The best thing about him, of course, is going to be his Mr. P porters. They can counter some snipers, and he can be somewhat underrated on knockout and bounty, but still there's normally a better option. Next up at number 20, we have Charlie, and again, another brawler that's completely fallen off. This one was a little bit unexpected though, because she only received a small damage nerf, but I think maybe everything just crept up on her. I think overall, again, she's just not really played too much. I don't even think that Charlie really sucks. Like, if he was to play Charlie just on ladder against just random compositions, she would have some decent value, but I think definitely the supercharge rate nerf has took a toll, and people have finally realized that you can still overwhelm Charlie. It takes her so long to get super, but again, I think in assassin meta, she's still okay. So now moving on to the C tier, starting off with Chuck. He's at number 19. So Chuck will probably be the easiest rank 30, rank 35 in heist you could ever get, but anything outside of that, Chuck just plain and simple sucks. There's some cheesy strategies that noobs probably can't deal with inside of a hot zone, gem grab, etc. But I still think in this meta, there's just too many brawlers that can just run all over him. He doesn't have the DPS or anything to counter those brawlers. Next up at number 18, we have Willow. So I would say that she's one of the least used brawlers in the game. So in terms of fun, you might not want to pick Willow, but I think she's always fairly decent. She's got some good damage. Again, the reason why she's C tier is because there's just better throwers out there. Like, you'd rather just go a Berry or Barley who just have more versatility, but again, she's still pretty decent and often underrated. Next at number 17, we have Eve. So another brawler that's just kind of lost its use cases, considering Angelo is just a way better version of Eve. I think her hatchlings just don't provide as much value as before, and it's actually pretty hard to consistently get damage now with just so many high mobility brawlers at the top of the meta, but she's still okay. Like, if he was just to push her on ladder, like, there's a lot of cheesy maps that you can easily play her on. Next at number 16, we have Lou. So another brawler which is pretty good if you're just playing on ladder. So if you was to play on hot zone, or you probably end up finding yourself playing up against a lot of assassins or megs, etc., then you can get some decent value out of Lou. But if you play a lot of ranked, it's hard to get your first Lou super a lot of the time because it's just, he's got a really inaccurate main attack. So he's a little bit inconsistent. That's the reason why he's in the middle of the pack. Next up at number 15, we have Sprout. So in terms of ranked, he's like a B/A tier brawler. He's pretty good at knockout and bounty. But if you play a lot of ladder only for trophies, then he's really hard to push. Actually, one of the hardest brawlers to push. So take this into consideration when you're picking Sprout. Even with a damage buff, his hypercharge is terrible as well. It's just too easy to counter. So take all of those things into consideration if you're going to unlock him. Next up at number 14, we have Buzz. So another assassin that's just dropping off. There's just more flashier brawlers that deal way more consistent damage at the top of the meta. He's still like an okay pick. You can have a lot of fun with Buzz. He's got a really good hypercharge, and of course, he's got some fire skins as well. So in terms of if you want to have fun, then go for Buzz. And he's still an okay brawler, but in terms of like the meta, he is starting to drop off a bit. So now moving on to the B tier, starting off with Otis. He's going to be your 13th best mythic brawler. Often he is underrated, but I think especially in this meta, he definitely is. He counters some of the best brawlers in the game like Mortis and Daryl with his super, where other brawlers really do struggle. And also super grassy maps, you know, Last Stop, for example. There's a lot of ranked maps where he's an amazing first pick, and people don't realize that in the casual games. But if you play Brawl Stars to have fun mainly, I don't know if Otis is that brawler for you. Next is the 12th best mythic brawler. We have Gray. So again, another underrated brawler who has some really good synergies. If you play a lot of ladder, especially with friends, you can get some disgusting strategies going. If you think of Hot Zone, you can go Gray, double tank, or just so many different synergies and get free trophies. He's really good on knockout and bounty as well, but I will say he's a lot more skilled than most brawlers, so take that into consideration. It depends. If you like skilled brawlers, then go with Gray. So next up is 11th best mythic brawler. We went with Melody. So Melody is often underappreciated, especially by myself as well. I know she will get burst down by some of the key meta brawlers, but still at the same time, she has so much versatility. And if you know the strats with Melody, you know how to get so much damage with those notes. Of course, she's like a free rank 30, rank 35 in heist. She's really good in Brawl to get quick goals and quick pushing trophies as well. And she's an underrated last pick into snipers and bounty and knockout, etc. So she is fairly skilled, I think, but I think she's a good brawler still. So now moving into the top 10, starting off with Jean. So Jean's always considered a safe pick if you're playing ranked, if you're playing knockout or bounty. Gem carry and gem grab. I think it's a lot more difficult to push Jean when you're playing ladder because again, there's so much Mortis, Daryl that are just running all over him. So just take all things into consideration. Also, you got to consider that Jean for the casuals isn't like the strongest of brawlers. You need good synergy. You need to understand that you need to pull people when you're close to your teammates, and maybe your teammates don't understand that either. So yeah, a lot of things to consider with Jean. So now we're going to be moving on to the A tier, starting off with Tara. She's going to be your 9th best mythic brawler right now. So since the introduction of her hypercharge, it's definitely pushed her up the meta. It's not made her broken or anything. It's just made her more of a viable pick. The hypercharge itself is really good, and there's also been some buffs to her star powers, which has allowed her to thrive a lot more. But I will say there's just more consistent lane options that can still counter her too much. That's preventing us from being at the top of the meta. So next up, as the 8th best mythic brawler, we have RT. So another underrated brawler always. In terms of use rate, he isn't used most by the casuals. So again, if you're looking for fun, I don't know if RT is that brawler, but if you're looking for competitive brawlers, RT definitely is. Knockout and bounty, he's insane. He's great at countering the kitschis if you play a lot of duels, for example, or showdown. He's just highly consistent. He has some really good synergies as well, you know, like Jean and knockout. He can just deal some insane damage. I think you can never really go wrong with an RT. If you've got good aim, then he's going to be really fun. So next up is the 7th best mythic brawler. I went with Max. So another brawler that's difficult to use for the casuals, so take that into consideration. But a high competitive gameplay, Max is always going to be a really strong brawler. She's got probably the best hypercharge inside of the game, because if you stack with your teammates, you can just get infinite supers and overwhelm the opponents. In Brawl and gem grab, she's always like near enough S tier because of the synergies that she can provide. She's a great counter to all the snipers in bounty, for example. But again, you need to be good at like juking, and I think if you're like in terms of a really competitive player, Max probably is your best option. So next up is the 6th best mythic brawler in the game. I went with Lily. So she's dropped off a little bit since the nerfs in the last update, but I think Lily still is a pretty consistent brawler. I will say that people are learning how to counter her a little bit more, but still, as a late pick in ranked, she's insane because of her gadget. Her gadget is so busted. She can still burst down brawlers so incredibly fast, and it's still some just really cheesy compositions. Like, it's just so hard to deal with a good Lily because it's like you've got a Leon invisibility at all points of the game. So Lily's still really strong. So now we're going to be moving on to the S tier mythic brawlers. I'm going to start off at number 5 with Buster. So Buster is always busted. He receives small nerfs, and that just doesn't do anything to him. I think it's such an incredible pick, whether you're playing ranked, whether you're playing ladder. If you're a good Buster player, I think you can just like appreciate how to play Brawl Stars in general. You can play him pretty much everywhere. Knockout, bounty, Brawl, gem grab. You can play him in so many different synergies. Buster is that guy, so I would advise unlocking him. So now moving into the 4th best mythic brawler in the game, I went with Byron. So again, Byron hasn't really been nerfed for a long time, even though he can cycle his super 3 shots. He does insane damage, insane healing. He's got a really good gadget, and there's just so much versatility with Byron. You can play him in pretty much every single situation. Even assassins find it hard to kill a Byron because of how quickly he can cycle super, especially if you've got the booster gadget. Like, I can kill Mortis so easily with Byron. Again, there's so many good synergies. He's really good in bounty and knockout, where the other snipers are. You can never go wrong with Byron. Next up is the 3rd best mythic brawler in the game right now. I went with Clancy's. So Clancy's a little bit harder to work in ranked because there are a lot of counters to him. But if you're playing ladder, especially in like heist or just anywhere where you see a lot of tanks, you can just pull out Clancy. You're going to get infinite value because level 3 Clancy is like the best brawler in the game. If you press the gadget and super at the same time, you can just get to that level 3 so quickly. And yeah, the burst damage with Clancy is just absolutely bizarre. So if you're facing off against a lot of Mortis and Frank players and Darryls, you're gonna have a field down ladder with Clancy. So next up, as the second best mythic brawler in the game right now, I'm not trolling, it is Mortis. So not only is he one of the most popular brawlers in the game, and he always has been, so people just go for Mortis anyways. He actually is one of the best competitive brawlers right now, but you need to have his hyper charge unlocked. Without his hyper charge, he'd be still a D tier brawler easily. The hyper charge completely carries him, but it carries him because he gets insane team wipes. He's just absolutely cracked out of his mind right now. Inside of ranked, he's the best late pick. So for example, he just counters so many different snipers, throwers, etc. On ladder, you just gotta be able to get your farm your super easily from all the tanks and whatever else. Yeah, he's just unstoppable right now, so I definitely recommend unlocking him. So moving on to the best mythic brawler in the game right now, there should be no debates here. It is 100% Mo. So some people still underrate Mo, and I just think he's a damage dealing machine. He can just burst down people so quickly. There's been so many instances where I've been a 10k HP brawler, and with a couple of shots and a super, I'm just dead in a flash shot. There's nothing I can do. His damage is just insane. It's like Spike, but Spike times 5. That's just how quickly he can deal damage. He can peek shots so easily with his main attack. His super can, of course, go under, over walls, whatever you want to call it, and just destroy everything in its path. He is completely busted in his meta, and you need to unlock him. So considering he had a small emergency nerf, I don't really see him getting any nerfs in the next few weeks or whatever. So unlock him, push him whilst he's broken, and just rinse and repeat, because that's how most new brawlers are. So anyways, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.